do you think Casey's run blocking grade is going to be for the Eagles this time?
Probably pretty good,
I would
including
think so.
Sayamala.
Yeah.
Let's bring KC Joyner in, NFL Insider, of course, right here on the Sports Bash, looking back at a win last night from the Eagles, much-needed win, Casey, and we'll start with that. The run game last night, 176 total yards on the ground. Did they do it because they had great backs, or did they do it because they had great run blocking?
They had great run blocking. I heard you mention Malo. I kept an eye on him specifically, and I loved what they were doing with him. They were getting him into space. As many times as they could, they were saying, we'll have him lean on a counter. If we do zone blocking, we're going to get into the second level immediately. They didn't try and have to do combination blocks. They said, we want to get this guy and use his athleticism in space, and he dominated last night. I've still got to do the deep dive look, but on my initial review of the game, he did not have any run blocks that he got beaten on last night, which is a huge plus over where he was earlier this year.
Yeah, and you had the combination of Howard and Sanders last night. I mean, when you watch those two backs, what did you see from those guys? Were there more yards to be had, or did they do a good job of hitting the holes?
I think they did a good job hitting the holes. And the thing is, I love the commitment that the Eagles made to the run game. I love the idea they're down 10-0, and there are a lot of coaches and a lot of teams that would say, we're down 10-0, second quarter, we need to go ahead and start. We're throwing the football. The Eagles said, we've got the run blocking to do this, and we've got the backs to do it. And I like the idea that they both had solid good blocking yards per attempt totals. I believe it was in 8.2 for Sanders and 7.8 for Howard. No, it's solid numbers. They weren't great, but they were good numbers. When you get two backs capable of putting up that type of production, you've got that kind of blocking, and you get down 10-0, there's no reason to panic, but a lot of coaches in the league would.
Yeah, Casey, it's not a normal Eagles game, or typical, I should say, when Carson Wentz they score 34 points. Wentz throws for 3 touchdowns, but he doesn't even get 200 yards passing. It seemed like he was very willing, with that great protection, to also take what the defense gives and not force too many passes.
The Packers came in with a lot of very good metrics in coverage. They were a very strong coverage team. Although I don't think those metrics I still have their cornerbacks and safeties mostly rated as yellow-rated players, not red-rated shutdown guys. But they play a very good scheme. They're very good at keeping things in front of them. So that was what the Eagles were going to be able to take. And I like how they were doing things to get Ertz open. I like that the route combinations they were using to give him some space. And they were doing the right types of things to say, we know we've got the ground game going. Now we just need to get enough in the passing game to make sure they don't stack the box, do things of that nature. And when it came to red zone, they weren't hesitant at all to go after the passing game. So I like the idea of how they were putting the passing game and the running game together.
Casey, real quick, in the passing game, we saw last week so many drops, right? That was a big problem. All these drops they had. And, people were kind of looking at all those drops and say, well, if they just catch the ball, they probably end up winning the game. Was last night a good indication of if they just catch the ball, they probably win those games? In other words, are they more talented than the teams and they lost to?
They are. I always get kind of fired off about drops, and you'll hear people say, oh, look at the number of drops this guy had. You can look at good receivers from year to year, and one year a receiver might have, say, 10 drops, and the next year they have 6 drops, and they're doing it like 150 targets. That's not there's so many variables to throw that off. You can't just say, oh, they're bad at catching passes. Drops sometimes just happen. It's not because you've got bad receivers. And Aguilar notwithstanding, I think he's going to continue to have problems with it. He might not just be the most consistent pass catcher, but sometimes they just happen, and it doesn't mean you need to throw in the towel in your passing game or you need to say the receivers are terrible. Keep these things in perspective. And by the way, if you're only dropping 6 passes on 120 targets, you're really only dropping, 3% of your throws? It's not something to worry about.
Speaking of Nelson Aguilar, I think he played 90% of the snaps, but targeted once. It was very early, and then not again. Is that something the Packers were doing defensively, or just other guys getting open, or Carson kind of going with more reliable hands?
I think that it was a matter of that they said that the Eagles said we're going to play call certain people open, and we're going to do. They did a lot of safe route combinations. A lot of slant flat, things of that nature, just a lot of safe route combinations. And on those, it's just a matter of which, if you're doing that kind of a slant flat, it's given a a defensive player, you got to pick one or the other, and whoever they pick is who you're going to throw to. And I just think they didn't set plays up to say, we're going to go get Aguilar open. We're just going to make him part of combinations or things of that nature. And if he happens to be there, he's there. And if he's not, we'll throw elsewhere. I don't think it's a matter of them just rotating him out of the offense. It's just a matter of circumstance. And when you only throw 27 passing and throw a few into the back, there's just not many opportunities for anybody.
All right, KC Joyner here. Real quick, too, let's look at the defense now. We got to go to the defensive side of the ball. The Eagles won with their offense and the balance and the consistency there. Defensively, though, if you're Howie Roseman, are you on the phone today calling Jacksonville or calling somebody that might have an extra corner? What'd you see from the back end of that defense last night? Is it a problem?
It is a problem. I believe they just signed Skandrick, if I saw correctly. But I'm looking for depth. It is a problem. Anybody can stop Adams. Adams is really good. He's a top guy. He can beat most any cornerback. But what I liked about it, though, later in the game, I think early in the game, they said, we're going to play really soft on Adams. We're going to be sitting 9 yards off and just give him whatever he wants. We're going to try and stop him getting deep. He was still hitting big plays deep. And finally, late in the game, they just said, the heck with this. This isn't working. Let's get out there and be physical with him. Up until he got hurt in the second half. I think he had 9 catches in the first half and 1 in the second half. And I know he got hurt, but they started getting up there and pressing him and saying, we're going to play more aggressive. We're going to get beat. We might as well get beat being aggressive. That seemed to work a lot more, and maybe that's the thing. If you don't have the talent, go ahead and be aggressive rather than sit back and play soft, because if you're going against a receiver like Adams, playing soft is just going to get you beat like it did.
Pass rush. All right, let's look at what the pass rush was. There was a graphic at one point, Casey, that said quarterback drops 41, sacks 1, hits 4. Did they have a good pass rush last night? What did you think of, Jim Schwartz's game plan last night in the pass rush?
Well, I like Barnett getting the strip sack fumble. I like that play. And again, I can't believe that the Packers were trying to block Barnett with the tight end. That didn't work, even though it was a trick play. It doesn't matter. You can't expect that. And sometimes those X's and O's, they look great on paper, but you get people out there and it doesn't work quite as well as you thought it did. I look at that situation, though, and go, I think that when you're against Aaron Rodgers, there's things that you want to do, and you don't want to commit too much to a pass rush because he's so good, and if you go overboard trying to get a pass rush, he's just going to crush you. So it's one of those situations where against certain cornerbacks, you want to give a pass rush no matter what. Against him, I think you can play the kind of way the way they did last night and just say, hey, we're going to have to accept what we get because we don't have the corners to stop them if they go deep.
Casey, what do you make of, I don't want to call it a linebacker play because a lot of times what you think is a linebacker in their defense is a safety or a nickel, but what do you think of their interior coverage, whether in base, nickel, whether it's 2 linebackers or a linebacker and a couple of safeties in the box? What do you think of how they perform?
I think their personnel says, it's odd because I think their personnel says that they would do better if they went with just a straight standard front, a 4-3 front. But I think that in the NFL today, you can't just do that, and you have to go to those other sets of things. I like the way their safeties play in short coverage. I like the way their safeties do certain things. But last night we saw, again, sometimes the Eagles just blow coverages. And I don't really care what kind of people they're putting out there. Sometimes they're still not communicating. And it seems we talk about this every year with this defense, that they have talent and they sometimes don't play to their talent level. That touchdown at the end of the first half, there's no reason that receiver should have been as open as he was. It's just that they blew the coverage. They didn't know who they should have covered and who they didn't cover. And that's still the things that they need to work on. So get the guys out there who are going to be where they're supposed to be is what I'd say.
Do you think they're running too many combinations of people out there so it's hard to get comfortable in one role?
Yes, I would absolutely say that sometimes you can get so creative that you ask your guys to do too much. And it's the thing that, like a Bill Belichick, when he's putting his defenses together, he finds out specifically what his guys can do and only asks them to do that. And I think sometimes the Eagles, like most NFL teams, will still try and ask players to do things they might not be quite as capable of. And if you've got a guy who's doing something he's not quite as capable of, an offensive coordinator spots that, you're going to get burned.
KC Joyner. So let me ask you about the blitzes last night, because if you're in this market and you're listening to the radio, the listeners and the fans, they want Schwartz doesn't blitz enough. He doesn't blitz enough. Does he not blitz enough? Is this just not a good blitzing team? Like, what is your take on Schwartz and the blitz and the personnel this team has?
You don't have cornerbacks that can cover. Why? I mean, if you go ahead and blitz, you're going to leave them with no help over the top. You're going to leave them even more on an island than you already did. I don't want to be blitzing. And against Aaron Rodgers, I don't want to be blitzing against Aaron Rodgers, who is, phenomenal reading defenses, leaving those cornerbacks who are already overmatched in that kind of coverage. No way. I'd rather sit back and do some of the things they did last night. Like the cornerbacks will play more aggressive, as noted, but that's where I'd get my aggressiveness. I don't want to leave guys sitting on an island like that, because they have players, even Allison and Valdez Scantling. They aren't great, but they're good, and they're good enough to get big plays against this defense. I would just say that what they did last night, even though they gave it 27, I still say that was the kind of game plan they needed to play.
34-27, Philly wins, and KC Joyner breaking it down. Let's look ahead to the Week 4 schedule and get some thoughts on these games from KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash. Tennessee heading to Atlanta to start things off. Tennessee had that big win against Cleveland to start the year. Atlanta beat Philly. Both these teams kind of searching for themselves here.
They are. I think Atlanta's closer because they've got so much more talent on offense, so they can get that kind of passing game. And if you're Tennessee and you're thinking of putting in Ryan Tannehill at this point, that kind of tells you where your season is. So I got Atlanta winning this one.
I like that Tannehill. New England and Buffalo. Buffalo 3-0. Buffalo's at home. I don't know. I guess this is one of those, hey, let's find out about Buffalo. But can they really hang with the Patriots?
I don't think they have the offensive firepower to hang with the Patriots, but they will give Tom Brady, they'll give that offense everything that they can ask for. I think it's going to be a more of a low-scoring game. If New England walks in there and thinks it's going to be a typical, it's Buffalo, we don't have to take them that seriously, and we can just punch these guys in the mouth. They could lose that game. I think it's still 80-20 that New England wins it, but I think that I wouldn't be shocked if New England doesn't play this game right, that Buffalo surprises them and keeps it really close.
Kansas City on the road 3 out of 4 weeks. They're going to Detroit, who hasn't lost yet, coming off a nice win in Philly. Now they come back home, so can the Lions knock off the Chiefs?
Matt Patricia's got to be pulling his hair out because he wants to be a run-first team. He wants to be this team that only runs the ball, throws the ball maybe 500 times at most. He wants to run the ball as much as he can, and he keeps getting in these matchups where he can't do it. This is a game where he's going to have his team throw the ball. It's just not what they want to do. They don't want to be a throw-the-ball 40-plus times team. And Mahomes, he's doing things, when you look at tape, he's doing things he shouldn't do, making passes he shouldn't make, but he's got the talent to get it done, and he can make Detroit play a game it doesn't want to play. Kansas City wins.
Looking at Week 4 with KC Joyner. Oakland, Indianapolis. Colts looking pretty good all of a sudden. Coming back home, Oakland's a disaster.
Oakland's a disaster, and their offense is going to be they're going to lean more on Jacobs, and I think they're going to try and pound the ball out because Darius Leonard, the all-pro linebacker for the Colts, is out with a concussion again this week. So I think it's going to be favorable for Oakland in that sense, but they just don't have the firepower on offense. Derek Carr still doesn't look like he wants to take passes downfield. I would advise him to watch some Mahomes tape and say, look, sometimes you just need to take chances and try to make big plays because you're not making them in your current incarnation. And because they're not doing that, because Colts offense is playing like it is, I got the Colts.
Chargers traveled across the country. Big favorite, 16 points against Miami. Can the Dolphins pull off an upset in their own building?
I don't think so. Even with Justin Jackson, the Chargers backup running back, he's out. They've got Melvin Gordon coming back. They say that he went from not being able to play at all, that he might play a limited role. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get 10 carries because the Dolphins' run defense, they're not on pace to set the record for most rush yards allowed. After this game, they're probably going to be a lot closer. Right now, they're on pace to give up 2,800 and change. 3,100 changes the NFL record, and I think the Chargers run the ball a ton, and Gordon gets out there and be at him and Eckler. I think they're going to just destroy Miami.
All right, destroy Miami. I like that. Washington, New York. You'll hear that game on 97.3 ESPN. The coverage begins at noon. Are you buying Daniel Jones? Is he the real deal in New York? And Washington's got all sorts of problems.
Washington has all sorts of problems. They got a lot of problems up with the run blocking. McLaurin is banged up, their top receivers, so Richardson's playing better, but still, if they lose McLaurin, that's a big loss for them. The Giants and Danny Dimes, I buy him, but at the same time, I look at the competition last week. I think the Bucs showed who they are. They still are a talent-challenged defense, but frankly, so is Washington. So I think Jones does very well, and New York wins that.
Cleveland, Baltimore. Now, a lot of people like Cleveland a lot. Baltimore's kind of been sneaky good here. The game's in Baltimore. They're a pretty big favorite, by the way. About a touchdown favorite is Baltimore. Is Cleveland just the victim of too much hype?
They are. Coming into the season, I was questioning if they should be, if their offense is going to be quite as good as people thought. I know they have the talent, but it takes time for those things to gel. And Baker Mayfield caught lightning in a bottle last year. There's a lot of reasons to think that. And teams are doing things to confuse him, and he's getting too aggressive, and he needs time to grow as a quarterback. And Baltimore's not going to give it that kind of time because they're a very strong front seven, and their secondary is very good too, and getting healthier too. So I like Baltimore on that one.
Carolina, Allen looks to be back under center. Houston had a nice win on the road last week. They get to come back home. As long as Watson's on his feet and healthy, you got to like Houston. They look pretty good.
They do, and their offensive line is still bad, but I think this is a game where they're going to be able to need more on their ground game. Allen, the competition is why he did as well as he did last week. He's playing a much stronger defense this time around. I think he's going to be very limited. I think Carolina falls behind early, and when they do, Houston can play the kind of game it wants to play, and their defense can also pin its ears back. So I think Carolina could get, I think it could be pretty heavy. I think it could be 27-10 Houston.
Tampa Bay, rough week for their defense last week. They were at home, and now they got to travel across the country and play the Rams. Bad spot for the Bucs here, it seems like.
It is, and the Rams still haven't even hit their stride on offense. They've got all those receivers. They got a great running game, but they still have not hit their stride. The way Tampa's defense has played at times this year, I think the Rams are going to be able to hit their stride. And the Rams' defense has played very well. I think their defense is why they're doing as well as they are this year. Their defense has been their calling card. And Tampa still has some blocking problems up front, and Winston is a big risk taker. So I bet the Rams pick off 3 passes and win that game by 10.
Is that a prop bet? 3 picks right there?
Oh, yeah, you know it.
Seattle is heading to Arizona. Arizona's been better than we thought, I guess, and Murray's getting better. Seattle, though, they looked terrible at home last week. Now they're going to travel on the road. It's just a tough trap game for them.
Arizona, if it wasn't for Miami, Arizona would have the worst defense in the league. That they are just that bad. They are horrible against the run. They're horrible against the pass. I keep downgrading their players to green ratings in more areas, and still every week I have to add more green rated players because they're just playing that badly. Their offense has talent, but they're going to be short of receiver this week. Demir Bird, their number 3 receiver, he's out, so going to be a little short-handed there. And Seattle secondary is playing better, and plus their run block has been very good this year. They've got a team that can do a lot of that. Add all those elements together, and I just think Seattle is going to win this handily.
Minnesota, Chicago, big North game here. Both teams winning record. Minnesota loves to run it. Seattle loves to stuff the run. This one should be a old classic black and blue division game.
It's got 7-6 written all over it.
Yeah, that it does. It does big time. And I can't believe Minnesota. I can because it's a Zimmer team. I still can't believe you've got Thielen, you've got Diggs, and you don't want to pass the ball more often. I know I get it. Fine. Throw the ball more frequently, except
and an $84 million quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. You gave him the money, give him the opportunity. He's got the receivers, and now he's got Cook, and he's got Madison as a backup, and plenty of talent there. I still think they will intentionally, I don't say intentionally, but their play calling will hamstring Cousins as much as the Bears do, and the Bears aren't going to hamstring their quarterbacks. I take the Bears.
Yeah. One thing with Minnesota in the past, I don't know about now, their line has been awful in years past, so maybe they just decided, the heck with this line, let's just run. All right, KC Joyner with us looking at the games. Jacksonville, Denver. I don't know what to think about Jacksonville. And Denver, we know, is decent defensively, but, I mean, these are 2 teams that aren't very good.
Yeah, Denver, what is it? They don't have a sack or an interception for the first 3 games. I guess the first time that's happened, if I remember the sack record, since 1969. They've got a ton more talent than that. Gardner Minshew, he looks like he can look the part of a QB1, and now he's playing more like it. He's got Chargers playing really well. Their run game is doing really well. Having said that, it's still at Denver. It's a cross-country trip. Denver's defense is capable of playing a lot better. Flacco is what Flacco is, but they have talent on offense too. So 2 mediocre teams. I'll pick the home team and go Denver.
Dallas heading to New Orleans. Home underdog here, the Saints are. People taking the Saints likely. Dallas has played 3 games against really nobody. But I like Dallas. I'm not saying they're overrated, but this is going to be the biggest test they've had so far.
They have played a bunch of sorry teams, and it is a reason that they're doing as well as they are. But that's one of the most creative offensive teams in the league right now. They are doing some things on offense that are getting the receivers open. They've got terrific run blocking, and Prescott just keeps looking more and more like he's worth that big contract. And the problem and think about it, they're doing it without Michael Gallup, their vertical threat, who's been out the last couple of weeks, and they've got Devin Smith in his place. So they're doing it without those people. But the Saints, they don't play to their talent level. Apple's a liability in coverage, and Marshawn Lattimore, he should be a shutdown corner talent-wise, nowhere near it. When you've got those kind of weaknesses in the secondary versus Dallas not having weaknesses in the secondary, I'll take the Cowboys.
All right, that's a look at Week 4 as we go around the league with KC Joyner, NFL Insider, here on the Sports Back. KC's back on Monday to recap all of these Week 4 games. And obviously the Eagles with the win last night, they have the Sunday off. But Monday, KC's back with a look at Week 4 in the NFL. All right, KC, enjoy the football all this weekend, pal.
You too, man. Appreciate it.